Okay, exercise 5.7 asks us to compute the break-even point a couple of different ways. Now remember, the break-even point is that point where contribution margin exactly equals fixed expenses. Put another way, the break-even point is that point where the economic profit is zero. So there's the formula. The profit is the unit contribution margin times the number of units sold minus fixed expenses. And when the profit equals zero, that is the break-even point. So there's the equation with the numbers poked in. The break-even point, the profit is zero. Our selling price is $8. Our variable cost is $6, so that's $2 per unit times the quantity minus our fixed expenses. We simply need to do the algebra. We have to do 2 times Q minus 5,500. In other words, how many units do we need to sell at $2 per to cover $5,500 worth of costs? So when we do the transposition, doing the algebra, we end up with 2Q equals 5,500. Divide both sides by 2, and our break-even in quantity is 2,750 baskets. So if we take our fixed cost and divide by our contribution margin, that will give us our break-even in units. Now, we can also compute our break-even point using the break-even in dollars. Remember, the last one we considered, we came up with break-even in units. This is in dollars, so for this we need the contribution margin ratio. The contribution margin ratio for this problem is we sell each unit for $8. Our contribution margin is $2. So our contribution margin ratio is 25%. Another way to say that is for every dollar of sales, we generate 25 cents of contribution margin up to the break-even point. So we've figured out that our contribution margin ratio is 25%. So now we can sub that information back into this equation. And again, keep in mind that we're looking for a profit of 0, and we're looking for the sales number. Do the algebra. Take fixed costs, divide by the contribution margin ratio, and that gives us the break-even point in dollars. Now, if you want to test that, if you're not sure, you don't believe me, which is probably a good plan, you can test that by simply taking the sales and divide by the selling price per unit. And I think if you divide 22,000 by 8, you'll come up with a number that looks an awful lot like 2750. It asks us to come up with the break-even point unit in sales. Another way we can do that is to take our fixed expenses and divide by the $2 per basket, essentially what we did in the equation method. The formula method is just another way of saying the same exact thing. As a matter of fact, when you get to the end of the equation method, you are basically using this formula, and we'll come up with the same answer. So, exercise 5.7 gives you an opportunity to compute the break-even margin, the break-even in units, the break-even in dollars. You can proof one against the other, and you've come up with a way to compute contribution margin ratio, which is hugely useful.